He stood in the cold, his hands shaking, not from the December chill, but from the weight of the decision in his palm. It was the only thing of value left, not just money, but memory, a promise. This ring, a thin band of simple gold, had been placed on Mary's finger 10 years earlier. It was supposed to be forever. Now, Thomas Miller was about to trade eternal love for 3 days of life. He pushed the ring across the counter of the pawn shop. The pawnbroker didn't even look up. He scraped the gold band with a file, tested it with acid, and muttered a number that was an insult to a decade of devotion. $2. Enough for a single sack of flour and a few loaves of day-old bread. This wasn't a choice, it was surrender. In 1933, the Great Depression had stripped away homes, jobs, and savings. But for Thomas, it had stripped away his very identity as a husband and a provider. How does a man, driven by love, commit the saddest sacrifice? How do you look your wife in the eye, knowing the most sacred symbol of your union is gone, traded for the basic right to survive? This is the story of Thomas Miller, of the Miller children, and the painful truth of what American grit cost in the darkest year of the Depression. Our story begins not with a crime, but with a collapse. The year 1933 marked the absolute low point of the American economy. Over 15 million men were unemployed. Thomas Miller, a skilled machinist from Pittsburgh, was one of them. Thomas and Mary were a classic American couple. They married young, ambitious, and bought a small home on a long-term mortgage. Their biggest concern in 1928 was choosing the color of their first car. The ring Thomas sold was a wedding gift from his own father, a small heirloom. The problem wasn't bad decisions, it was history. The stock market crash had snowballed into a banking crisis, and the banks took Thomas's savings, then his job. His identity was tied to the tools he used and the paycheck he brought home. By the winter of 1933, Thomas and Mary had been rationing their food for months. The children, Sarah, 8, William, 6, and little Timmy, just 3, were frail. Mary was cutting down her own meals, pouring the milk she desperately needed into Timmy's cup. Thomas saw the exhaustion and the fear in her eyes, a fear that transcended their financial ruin. This desperation brings us to the core question of survival. When everything is gone, what is the one thing you refuse to sacrifice? For Thomas, the answer was his children's lives, and the price, the single object that represented his entire life before the Great Depression. Thomas's struggle wasn't just physical, it was psychological. Every morning, he joined the silent, endless line of men outside the mills, hats in hand. He was an expert machinist, but the foremen simply shook their heads. He tried odd jobs, shoveling snow for a nickel, patching neighbors' shoes for old fabric scraps. These small acts kept them alive, but eroded his soul. He'd hide his shame from Mary, saying he'd just missed the job that day. The local community soup kitchen was his last resort. He'd walk for miles just to see the smoke rising from the chimney, but he never went in. His dignity, he felt, was the last possession his children could inherit. He knew that accepting charity meant accepting final defeat. But every empty day meant another sleepless night from Mary, listening to the thin, hungry breaths of the children in the next room. The worst enemy that winter wasn't hunger, it was the cold. Thomas had already chopped all the non-essential furniture for firewood. The heat was a luxury they couldn't afford. Timmy, the youngest, began to cough. It wasn't just a cold. It was the dust pneumonia that plagued those living in poverty. He desperately needed milk, a luxury now costing more than gold. Thomas pawned his grandfather's pocket watch,
a treasured heirloom. It fetched $10. A fortune, they thought. But the $10 disappeared in a week on medicine and the doctor's visit. The medicine helped, but the money was gone. Thomas faced the mirror and saw a beaten man. The walls were closing in, and Mary was growing weaker, sharing her meager portions. That night, Thomas made the rounds through the house. He checked on Sarah, William, and finally Timmy, whose forehead was feverish. He promised his sleeping children, "Tomorrow we eat." But he had no plan, no money, and no items left to sell. He went to the kitchen and looked at Mary, sleeping fitfully on the couch, wrapped in a thin blanket. The decision wasn't made in anger or self-pity. It was made with a chilling, surgical certainty. There was one thing left, one object that, regardless of the economy, held the value of pure gold. He gently, carefully slipped the wedding ring off her finger. It came off easily. Mary had lost weight. He held the small, cold band of gold. It was heavier than any money he'd ever held. Thomas left before dawn. He wore the same worn coat, but his soul felt naked. He couldn't face the main street, so he found a dingy pawn shop tucked away in a back alley. He placed the ring on the glass counter. The pawnbroker, a man named Silas, was a creature of the Depression, cold, calculating, and accustomed to profiting from tragedy. Silas didn't need to ask the story. The desperation was visible. Silas offered $2. Thomas didn't argue. Argument required energy, and he had none left. He simply nodded. Silas counted out the money in dirty bills. Thomas refused to look at the empty space on his hand. He walked out with the $2, the weight of the world lifted, replaced by the piercing knowledge of what he had done. He hadn't sold an object, he had sold a chapter of his life. But for the first time in weeks, he had purchasing power. He went straight to the baker, who had refused him credit a week before. He bought the largest sack of flour and 5 loaves of bread still warm. The baker was surprised, but asked no questions. It was 1933. He returned home, dropping the sack on the floor. Mary rushed to him, not asking where the food came from, only weeping in relief. The children rushed out, their eyes wide with disbelief at the sight of actual food. As they ate, Thomas kept his left hand in his pocket. Mary, distracted by the miracle of a full stomach, didn't notice the missing ring. Thomas knew he couldn't tell her. Not now, maybe never. But Thomas felt the absence. The skin where the gold band once rested was cold. He was living a lie, but it was a lie that kept his family breathing. This act of deception was his ultimate duty of care. The $2 bought them a week of fragile peace. Thomas used the flour sparingly, making thick, watery gravy to stretch the meals. But the cold returned, and the children needed new shoes. The clock was ticking again. He realized the $2 had been a temporary fix, not a solution. He had burned the bridge of his past to fuel a week of his present. He had to find a sustainable way out, or the next sacrifice would be permanent. The secret of the ring became a physical burden. He avoided holding Mary's left hand. He avoided talking about the past. Every action was now governed by the need to protect his wife from the truth of his despair. He knew that if Mary discovered the truth, it wouldn't be anger, it would be shared devastation.
She would know just how close to the abyss they truly were, and that knowledge, Thomas felt, would break her. The food ran out. This time, there was nothing left to sell. Thomas sat alone in a cold room, contemplating the unthinkable, admitting defeat, and moving the family into a Hooverville camp. Mary finally spoke that evening, not about the hunger, but about the future. "We can't just wait, Thomas. We have to do something." Her voice was steady. She hadn't broken. She was simply ready to fight. She proposed moving to a relative's farm hours away, even if it meant sharing space and working for scraps. Thomas, still clinging to the idea of protecting her, refused. He had to earn their survival. It was then, in that argument, that the truth almost slipped out. Thomas yelled, "I already sacrificed everything!" He stopped himself, catching his wife's eye, which was filled with sudden, cold suspicion. The next day, Thomas was walking aimlessly when he saw a bulletin board outside the local post office. A new federal program was starting up, a massive public works initiative. It was President Roosevelt's Civilian Conservation Corps. It offered work, food, shelter, and a steady salary of $30 a month, most of which was sent directly home to the family. Thomas applied immediately. He told Mary the truth about the program, but not the ring. Mary supported him. It was a separation, but it was a planned separation with a purpose. Thomas left by train 3 days later. It was painful, but the shame of the ring was slowly being replaced by the pride of honest work. He was fighting for his family again, not just surviving. The $25 a month arrived religiously. Mary began to gain weight. The children started school again. The biggest change wasn't the food, it was hope. Thomas worked for 2 years, planting forests and building dams. He saved every extra nickel. His goal was simple: to buy back the ring. He didn't find the original ring. It had been melted down. But he bought a new, simple gold band, identical to the first. It wasn't the same, but the meaning was deeper. On their 15th anniversary, Thomas gave Mary the ring. She cried. He confessed the entire truth: the hunger, the pawn shop, the $2. Mary didn't see a broken man. She saw a hero. The Miller family survived the 1930s. They moved back to Pittsburgh after the war, and Thomas got his job back. The small, simple ring became a family heirloom, passed down not as a symbol of marriage, but as a symbol of the depths of love under pressure. This is the reality of the Great Depression. It didn't just test the economy, it tested the human spirit. It asked, "What is your ultimate price?" And for Thomas, the ultimate price was the only thing he had left that wasn't for sale: his dignity, sacrificed for his children. The American grit of the Miller family shows us that true value is never in the gold, but in the will to survive. Never forget the sacrifice. If this story of raw resilience and painful sacrifice resonated with you, hit the subscribe button. By joining the American Grit Tales family, you ensure that these true stories of human endurance are never forgotten.